All right, welcome everyone. I am thrilled you're here for today's webinar, The Truth About Accessibility, Lesser Known Facts to Elevate Your Business or Organization. My name is Suzanne Boyd and I'm the CEO at Anthro-Tech. And at Anthro-Tech, we believe in designing for people first. Because when you make things easier for your customers, you can create real results. You can increase revenue. You can improve access to services, reduce cost, strengthen your brand. So today we are diving into digital accessibility and we'll talk not just about what it is, but why it's a game changer. So we'll bust some common myths, share surprising insights, and show you how small but smart changes can make a huge impact. So let's get started. I've introduced myself and I am so honored to have my colleague Shruti here. Shruti, would you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Shruti Vijayakumar, and I am a digital accessibility specialist at Anthro-Tech. And my passion for accessibility comes from the belief that everyone deserves equal access to opportunities and equitable access to information. And I have about 5 years of experience in my field, and I've been making websites, mobile apps, documents accessible, and also helping organizations make accessibility a sustainable part of their process. And I've had the pleasure of working with some amazing organizations at Anthro-Tech, where I've worked with champions of accessibility, and I'm happy to be sharing some insights from that experience today.
Thank you for joining me, Shruti. We'll touch quickly on Anthotech and then we'll get to the good stuff. So a little bit about us. Anthotech is a human-centered design consultancy, helping government, agencies, nonprofits, and mission-driven enterprises create products and services that work for people. And our research-driven process called human-centered design engages the people we're designing for every step of the way, making sure that our solutions are usable and accessible and improve people's lives. And I started Anthro-Tech in 1997 from a spare bedroom with a very simple belief, which is that good design starts with understanding people. And so today, as a women-owned business with offices in Olympia and Seattle, and a team of experts spread across the United States, our purpose remains the same. We are building a great business that makes things better for people. So we'll start off with a little bit of housekeeping. Welcome to those of you joining here. This is an interactive session. We want to hear from you. So feel free to drop your questions or comments in the chat anytime. I'll do my best to monitor, and we'll also have some Q&A towards the end. For those of you who use ASL, you can pin the interpreter, Kathy, on your screen so she can remain visible at all times throughout the webinar. If you're not sure how to do this, just reach out via chat. Yes, the webinar is being recorded, so if you need to step away or want to revisit any part of the discussion, you'll have access to it later. And after the event, we'll be publishing the recording, so you can share it with colleagues or refer back to it later. And then also, if you'd like, you can turn on live captioning on or off on your own settings. Again, if you need help, just pop it in the chat. So let's get to good stuff. Over to you, Shruti. Oh, actually, sorry, we're starting with a question for you all. We're mostly here. What is the one thing you're hoping to learn today? If you could just share with us in the chat what you hope to get out of the session today. Best practices. Anything else? Well, let's keep going, learn more about Anthotech. We are going to have a variety of different topics today. Shruti, why don't you let us know what's not on the agenda?
Yeah, what's not on the agenda is you are going to get sued or any conversation around lawsuits. While it's a real possibility that if your websites or products are not accessible, you could get a lawsuit, but that's not going to be the focus of this conversation, this webinar. Instead, we are going to focus on the benefits and opportunities that accessibility brings. And there are so many. And we'll also be talking about the 5 lesser known facts to elevate your business. And then we'll share some details about a free consultation that you can have with Anthro-Tech. Let's begin by talking about digital accessibility. Digital accessibility is about removing barriers for people with disabilities. And at its core, it's not overly complex. It's about writing clean, efficient code and about making sure that any important information for your customers is both visible and findable. Digital accessibility makes content not only accessible for people with disabilities, but it also makes it usable for all of your customers. And it's a way for your organization to align itself with social responsibility, of course, doing the right thing. But it's also about, tapping into economic opportunities and making sure that your teams are working in efficient ways and being innovative. And it's also about preparing for the future, because things that help AI agents access information also help people with disabilities who use assistive technology. And I'll be talking a little bit more about that in the webinar, but that's a little bit about digital accessibility.
Thank you, Shruti. And so we have a little bit of a sense of who's in the room today. If you could please share with us via chat how you would rate your knowledge of digital accessibility. So if you're just brand new to the topic, let us know you're a newbie. If you know it, some experience, or if you're an expert, share that you're an expert. I can see right away we have a very diverse audience. Love that. We think there'll be something for everyone here, regardless of your level of experience.
Okay, let's jump right into the 5 lesser known facts to elevate your business. Fact number 1 is that disability is an inherent part of the human experience. There seems to be this notion that we have 2 camps, 2 groups in the world, which is people with disabilities and people without disabilities, and that we're designing for this other group that exists. But the reality is more fluid than that. When we talk about disability and accessibility, we're talking about you and me and our loved ones. And disability is a natural part of human experience. We're actually designing for everyone. A disability could impact you or a loved one, and in fact, it will impact you or a loved one. And to explain that, we have this diagram here which shows different types of disabilities. So a permanent disability could be something that somebody was born with or acquire as a result of an accident or a disease. For example, permanent blindness. A temporary disability could be a disability that could occur because of an accident. So if you were temporarily not able to move your shoulder or arm, that would count as a temporary disability. And then we also have situational, where, for example, you're driving down the road and it's a bright sunny day. And because of that, the glare of the sun, it affects your visibility as you drive, and that could count as situational disability. So as you can see, it's something that could happen to anyone and will happen to everyone at some point. And yeah, it's a natural part of the human experience.
Yes, Shruti, that actually reminds me of when I was a working mom with a newborn. I'm still a working mom, but no more newborns. But my second child was super colicky and wanted to be held all the time. And so I became an expert at cradling him in one arm while typing and navigating the computer with the other. So it wasn't permanent, but in that moment, I had to adapt, just like many people do every single day. So would you say that that's an example of a temporary or situational disability?
Yeah, I think that's a great example of yeah, it's something between temporary and situational, and there's fluidity even between that. So your child needs you at that moment, and you're using just one arm, and you're only able to use technology with that one arm. So yeah, designing for people with motor disabilities would help you in that situation. So
Yeah.
thanks for sharing that example. That's a great one.
Yeah, maybe others can relate to that.
Um, Accessibility is also a way to broaden your audience. People with disabilities are the largest minority group. There are 1.3 billion people with disabilities in the world, and there's 61 million people with disabilities in the US, which is about a quarter of the population. And they have a discretionary income of 21 billion US dollars. So this is not a small group by any means. And their friends and families and allies are also more likely to support businesses that prioritize accessibility.
So, Shruti, taking that 25% there, if we were to apply that statistic to the number of people that have joined us today, which is a little bit upwards of 20, that means that about 5 of us could have, or 4 of us could have some type of disability right here in the room with us today.
Yeah, that's right. And something to note also is that there are people with disabilities who don't consider themselves as having a disability. So, for example, one of the most common disabilities is frequent migraines, and that actually, makes you sensitive to light and sounds sometimes, and it impacts your ability to work in a certain situation. And so that would be counted as a disability. Not many people who have migraines might think of themselves as having a disability. So there's just, that to consider as well. But you're absolutely right. There could be 5 of us in this room with a disability.
Wow. And you touched on a couple of them. What are sort of the types of disabilities that we need to design for?
Yeah, it's such a diverse group. When I say people with disabilities, it is a very diverse group. We have people with vision related disabilities, so blindness, partial blindness, low vision, or color blindness. And then also auditory, so people who are deaf and hard of hearing, speech related disabilities or motor disabilities, if you have arthritis or dexterity issues that impacts your ability to use technology. And then also cognitive disabilities, there's just which is an umbrella term for so many different types of disabilities, and neurological, psychological, somebody with ADHD or dyslexia. So yeah, just a few of them. And just one more point to add there is that we might think of somebody as being just blind, but that's not the case. Many times disabilities overlap, and that creates its own unique experience. So somebody could be blind and be hard of hearing, and that could impact their experience as well. Digital accessibility is also a way for you to stand out in a competitive market. Large organizations prioritize accessible software procurement, and these organizations have large procurement budgets. To give you an example, some US federal agencies like the Department of Justice, some companies like Google, Microsoft, and universities like the University of California system. All of these organizations prioritize accessibility when they are adding a software tool to their ecosystem. And also, accessibility opens up opportunities in international markets because there are many countries that require the software that they procure or the companies are procuring to be accessible. And some of these countries that have strict laws around accessibility are Australia, Japan, Canada, and countries in the European Union. All right, let's move on to fact number 2. Universal design has universal benefits, both for the people that we're designing for and the teams that are designing the website or product. So let's talk about the end users or customers first. Accessibility improves the experience for everyone. This is also called universal design, and there's a common there's a common term for it, which is called curb cut effect, which is the curb cuts which were initially made for people using wheelchairs to navigate roads and sidewalks efficiently, also ended up helping so many different people using strollers or bicycles or heavy bags with wheels. So yeah, accessible universal design is just good design for everyone. And I'd like to give a few more examples in the digital space. So when you increase the color contrast of components like buttons and text on a website for people who are low vision, you are also improving visibility for everyone, even somebody with 20/20 vision. If they were outdoors and there was a glare on their device, they would be able to see that button better because of high contrast. Eliminating distractions and using plain language, which benefits people with cognitive disabilities. So maybe somebody with ADHD or dyslexia. It could also enhance readability and engagement for all users. And creating responsive websites with large buttons and links for people with motor disabilities actually improves mobile usability for all users.
That, Shruti, brings up another story for me of a project we worked on, building an inventory management system that was going to be used on handheld iPads. And the focus for that project was to make it accessible for people with motor disability. So we designed the interface to have large tap targets, big buttons, and so on. But what we actually found was that it also helped a very specific use case, which was common, which was restaurant workers taking inventory in walk-in freezers wearing gloves. So it made it much easier for them to use as well. So it's just another example of how designing for accessibility improves usability for everyone.
Yeah, that's a great example.
All right, so reaching out to all of you in the audience, think about a time that an accessibility feature helped you. Could be something on the computer, could be something in physical space. Oh, interesting, Jack. Dark mode on the machine, talk to text. I talk to Siri all the time in the kitchen when I set my timers. Subtitles, these are great examples. One I'll share that I use as well is I tend to pack too much stuff when I'm going from office to office, and so my hands will be tied with bags. And so I use the automatic door opener quite a bit with my elbow, so I don't have to drop my bags. There it is, Jack, same thing. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, we talked about how accessibility can benefit customers and end users, but it actually also makes internal teams much more efficient. And one example of that is that one of the best practices for accessibility is to use semantic HTML. And semantic HTML is written with assistive technologies in mind, but it also helps developers introduce structure in the code, makes code more readable, and less prone to errors, and therefore it's easier to maintain and test. And to give you an example of this, I'd like to show you what non-semantic HTML looks like and what semantic HTML looks like. Starting with non-semantic, the image you see on the right-hand side is, a simple UI component. It's a menu with a list of links. And on the left-hand side, we have the code for that UI. And as you can see, you don't have to be a developer to understand this, but it's a bunch of generic div tags. And within those div tags, you have to specify the role. So what's a heading and what's the menu item? And if you just were to read the left-hand side of the tags, it looks like, a bunch of divs, and there's a slang term for this. It's called div soup, which also is very telling about how complex it can be to read through this. And then I want to show you semantic HTML, which is where the tags itself specify what the component is. So it's the same UI, nothing has changed visually, but the code has the heading within heading tags, the menu is in the menu tag, and each list item is in li or list tags. And if you were to read this again, just looking at the left-hand side where we see the tags, you can immediately see that it's easier to see where something is. And for developers, it would actually improve their ability to spot errors in certain sections. So accessibility also improves search engine optimization. Some best practices that helps assistive technology users or people with disabilities in general help improve the website search rankings as well. Some of those examples are descriptive alternate text for images, descriptive and unique page titles, well-structured content, proper use of headings, captions on videos, and in general, keyboard accessible content. I have an example for you here on the page. It's an image of this burger, and the alt text reads, a vegan bean patty burger with lettuce, avocado, and a freshly baked bun, a healthy plant-based meal option. And not only is this alternate text going to help a screen reader user understand what the image is about, but it's also going to be helpful when somebody searches for some keywords like vegan or healthy or plant-based, and your website would show up before other websites because of those keywords. Accessibility is also preparation for the future. So all of the principles that apply to making content accessible to assistive technologies like screen readers would also apply to AI agents being able to more accurately crawl your website and gather information. We live in a world where AI can help us plan a lot of trips or events, but it's possible that it's already or in the future AI would help us make purchases or make reservations as well. Answer questions, summarize reviews, which it already does, and then also analyze content and produce data-driven insights for the business. So yeah, AI is accessibility is actually preparation for the future.
Shruti, could you give a concrete example of that? If I'm own a restaurant or something, how might making my website accessible help my business through SEO or AI agents, basically?
Yeah. So imagine that, as just looking at from the customer's point of view, if I were to type in a prompt which says, I'm going to be in the city at this specific time and I'm looking for a nice meal to have with my friend, and we want to have, a waterfront view, and we're both vegans, so we want vegan and healthy options. And if you were to type that prompt, then, AI can actually, choose your website over others because of those keywords you've added earlier. And also offer to make a reservation with those specific customized requests that you have. So if it's, waterfront view or the, specific table or, so yeah, it's going to making your website accessible would help your customers reach you faster and like work with AI agents as well.
Got it. Thank you.
So yeah, I realized all my examples are food related or cooking related, but it's accessibility is an opportunity for innovation. This popular brand for kitchen tools, OXO, initially they started with making some specific products for people with arthritis. So especially their line of good grips is catered towards that group. But it's so widely used by so many different people, and it's just a great kitchen tool for anyone, not just for people with disabilities. Audiobooks were initially made for people who are blind, but it's so widely used by everyone now. Audio video announcements in airports, if you are waiting for your flight and you have your earphones in and you don't want to miss your flight. So being able to see a video or, an announcement on the screen as well as the audio can help you as well as somebody who's deaf or hard of hearing or blind. Responsive websites help everyone. If you were to use a different devices, or you were on a phone or a tablet, it would benefit you, and it would also benefit people with motor disabilities. And closed captions, of course, help so many people, and it also helps people who are deaf and hard of hearing.
Shruti, I saw the comment in the chat there. I highly recommend reading the case study about the OXO product line. I did it in preparation for this webinar, and I learned that the founder of that company, Sam Farber, saw his wife, who had arthritis, really struggle to use kitchen tools. And so while the original goal was to help people with arthritis, the ergonomic design proved to help everyone, whether you're like a professional chef or an older person or kids learning how to cook in the kitchen. So to me, that's such a important aspect of this conversation too, which is that designing for accessibility isn't just about compliance or social good or doing the right thing. It's smart business. Look at how many products this company has sold by making it easier for everyone.
Okay. Fact number 3 is get accessible quick schemes don't work. So there's some overlap between finances and accessibility in that sense. So when I say get accessible quick schemes, I'm talking about overlays. And let's talk about what the appeal of overlays is and what it is. Overlays is a software tool that lives on top of a website. And it could be in the form of a plugin or widget, and it could open automatically when the page loads, or it could be something that the user has to click on to open. And they claim to automatically fix accessibility issues. And it's sold as the seemingly fast and inexpensive solution to making your website accessible. But the reality of overlays is very different. Any benefits that it has is usually overstated and redundant. So the tools like increasing color contrast or enlarging text size, there are tools for that available which are free for people to use, and so you don't really need an overlay for that. And overlay screen readers and other features actually interfere with assistive technology. And people who use these assistive technologies are often forced to close their own customized assistive tech and be forced to use the one that overlay offers. Overlay companies have also made false claims of being WCAG and ADA compliant. And that's simply not true. and they don't protect you from lawsuits. And in fact, having an overlay on your website could even encourage one. So there was this WebAIM survey that was conducted. It's a reputable organization, and they conduct surveys every year. One of those surveys was about accessibility practitioners' insights on overlays and effectiveness. And a majority of them, 70%, about 70% of them said that overlays are not effective. And just a small minority, 3%, said that they're very effective. Let's see what people with disabilities are saying. So on Twitter, we had one blind user say, I know with 100% certainty, any site which has deployed an overlay in the past year and a half has been less usable for both my wife and me, both blind. Another person said, every time I go on a website and I hear the accessibility notification that this site is adjusted to my screen reader, I know that my blocker isn't working properly and I'm in for a hellish experience on that particular website. So what can we learn from the reputation fallout of these overlay companies? It's important to identify false claims and any quick fixes so that we can avoid lawsuits and also avoid losing the trust of customers. It's important to acknowledge the experiences of people with disabilities and listen to them when they say something isn't working for them. And recognize the impact of boycotts and the power that this group holds on your reputation and business operations in the long run. Mm-hmm. I do want to say that automation isn't always bad. Automated accessibility checkers are great tools, especially when combined with manual evaluations. And some examples of these tools are Acts Dev Tools, Google Lighthouse, and Wave. And overlays, the difference between these checkers and overlays is that overlays claim to fix issues, whereas checkers identify issues, and we're able to use manual evaluations to fix those issues.
It's almost like overlays cover up accessibility issues.
Yeah, exactly.
So we'd love to hear from you again. What's one accessibility issue that you've encountered or struggled to address, perhaps at work? I'll certainly share mine. Alt text, yeah.
Okay, moving on to fact number 4. Accessibility isn't rocket science. It's about intentionality. Accessibility has developed this image of being really expensive and difficult to manage, time consuming. But the truth is that if you were to integrate accessibility early on, it becomes very manageable and cost effective, especially if you're intentional about how accessibility guidelines are a part of every part of the process. So development, maintenance, business strategy. And it's also important to make sure that you're including the perspectives of people with disabilities, both from the angle of your customers and also if you have people with disabilities working with you, making sure that their voices are heard and they are part of important discussions. So now let's talk about how accessibility could be intentional in the development process. So using accessibility best practices while writing code, for example, semantic HTML that I shared earlier, building accessible component libraries, so making sure that we have reusable, repeatable components that are accessible so that it's easier to maintain long-term. And once we have written that code, making sure that we use automated tools, reliable ones, to ensure that we're catching any issues early on and fixing them. And following it up with a manual evaluation so that we're able to capture those issues that automated tools may not capture, because automated tools only capture about 25 to 30% of the issues. Here's an example of what we might find in a manual audit versus an automated or by an automated tool. And it's a keyboard trap. I'm going to play the video, but I just want you to take a look at how the keyboard focus moves from one component to another. And eventually it will go into a loop or a keyboard trap that will not allow keyboard users to come out of.
There's the loop.
You can be intentional in research when it comes to accessibility by involving people with disabilities in research studies, making sure that you're creating personas that reflect the experiences of people with disabilities and reflect their personhood as well. What are their wants and wishes beyond the disability, and how does that factor into their experience of using technology? Are we prioritizing the most impacted user groups, and are we adopting an iterative way of problem solving during research? Here's an example of a research insight from one of Anthro-Tech's research studies. And this was a blind participant who was comparing two forms, one accessible, one not accessible. And in the one that was not accessible, the participant had to use a lot of keystrokes to get through the form and navigate the form. And here's what they had to say. Time is everything. Time is money, right? And remember, these are my hands going through keystroke by keystroke by keystroke. So yeah, if I can cut an hour out of each form because of its simplicity, I preserve my hands for other projects for the day. And we're proud to report that at Anthro-Tech, we had 885 people with disabilities that participated in our research studies in 2024. Accessibility can be an intentional part in design. And in fact, designers are an important part of making it easy to maintain. So accessible design systems, for example, these repeatable, reusable components like buttons, if once they are made accessible, can be, developers can use those and rely on those to reduce the risk of introducing accessibility issues as they are maintaining the website. And designers also make important choices that support accessibility. For example, choosing choosing UI components that have multiple interaction methods. So for example, it should be accessible by mouse and by keyboard and speech input. Designers also make choices about typefaces and font sizes that can improve readability for all users. And they can also add visual cues to find out, convey to the user if something is clickable, not clickable, and what are some outcomes that can be predicted because of those visual cues. So accessibility in design is very important. Accessibility can also be an intentional part of content strategy. So categorizing and grouping content in a way that is easy to find for all users, and providing clear, concise alternate text for meaningful images. Also using plain language to minimize cognitive load and fatigue and chronic pain. I like this quote by Ginny Reddish, which says, every use of your website is a conversation, and the site visitor starts that conversation. Something that's important to remember when we think about content strategy. And now all of those different departments or processes that I mentioned would not be possible if accessibility is not an intentional part of business strategy. It needs to be a part of the culture, and accessibility needs to be a priority for it to be integrated right from the beginning. Organizations can use accessibility best practices as a way to communicate maturity, where they could acknowledge accessibility gaps, their efforts, and also invite feedback from their customers to make their products more accessible. Building your brand image and reputation is also something that you can do with accessibility and aligning yourself with that social responsibility, which would inevitably increase sales and customer loyalty when you show that you care about your customers.
Thank you, Shruti. Question for the audience, and I think we have both private sector and nonprofit and government represented here. Does your organization prioritize accessibility? Yes, no, or working on it? Good. Folks are working on it or doing it.
That's awesome. Okay, moving on to the last fact I have here for you, which is experts who want to help don't gatekeep accessibility knowledge. Now, we realize that not everyone has a dedicated accessibility team. And when we want to make accessibility a part of the process, you may want to work with a vendor. And when you choose to work with a vendor, you can look out for a few red flags. So for example, if somebody makes superlative claims of making a website perfectly accessible, that's something that should raise a concern for you, because they're not acknowledging any gaps in the current accessibility research. Also, using any vague language to describe their process is a red flag. And refusing to collaborate cross-functionally. Are they not willing to teach you how to make accessibility a part of your process? And are they relying solely on automated testing and completely ignore manual evaluation or research or design? Here are some green flags to look out for when choosing vendors. Accessibility research today does have some gaps, and communicating those gaps transparently is part of how we can make accessibility a part of the process. Are these vendors leveraging resources that you already have so that we can have the most impact? And are they willing to collaborate and build team self-sufficiency? And also, are they using a multifaceted approach? So are they using automated tools and manual evaluations, design, research, help you with business strategy? All of those things contribute to making accessibility sustainable.
Thank you, Shruti. Before we recap and open it up to questions, we want to offer you a thank you for joining us today, a free consultation with any one of our digital accessibility experts. So think of this as a casual conversation, and we can explore various topics and point you in the direction of resources. For example, you can reach out to us about how to do accessibility evaluations, how to do manual evaluations, to complement the automatic ones, how to include people with disabilities in usability studies, training and coaching, how to develop a strategic roadmap. A lot of organizations are looking to this April 2026 DOJ deadline to become compliant. It can be very overwhelming. So we can talk with you about creating a roadmap that guides you through that process. And then, of course, the general topic of designing inclusive digital experiences. So you can just text us or, email us at info@anthotech.com, or you can scan the QR code here and fill out a short contact form. We'll be in touch right away to schedule something that works for you. And let's recap, Shruti.
Yeah. So we learned that disability is an inherent part of the human experience. Universal design has universal benefits. Accessibility isn't rocket science, it's about intentionality. Get accessible quick schemes don't work. And experts who want to help don't gatekeep accessibility knowledge.
So if you haven't left already, we totally understand. It's lunchtime over here. But if you are still here, which one of these resonates the most with you? Which one of these 5 takeaways that we shared with you today? And you can just punch in the number. Thanks. Cool. Something there for everyone. Thank you. All right, well, we do have a few minutes. I'll let you close out here, Shruti, and then if you could open it up for Q&A for anyone who has a question still.
Yeah, I just wanted to end with saying that accessibility is the future, and it's wise to embrace it now, create accessible, inclusive, and usable environments, and set yourself apart from the competition. And we can now take questions.
You can either come off mute or type it in the chat, whatever works for you.
I'll come off mute because I talk much faster than I type. When you look at the typical development life cycle and all the roles in it, which role do you think is either the most likely, the best positioned, or should be responsible for being sort of the accessibility conscience of the whole life cycle, of looking at, you know, is accessibility built into each of the development steps, phases, et cetera, whether it's agile or waterfall, et cetera. Is there one role that you've seen that if this role, this person gets it right or keeps thinking about it, the team's much more likely to create an accessible product or service? And I'll go off mute.
I have a thought about that, but Shruti.
Yeah, I think what I've learned is, you know, working with teams, it's most efficient, of course, to have the entire team be responsible. Like everyone has a role to play when it comes to accessibility, where when you're implementing it, you need to be, you know, responsible for certain things. If you're part of business strategy or leadership, you have other things to worry about that, you know, that also contribute to accessibility. So I do think it's not one specific role, but it's a responsibility that all teams need to take, and every member of the team needs to take. But I also do, you know, in the organizations that I've worked with, I've realized that when you have a really strong foundation set from, you know, the top, from leadership and management about accessibility, that really does trickle down, and everyone takes it more seriously and makes it a part of their job. So I would say, if you're a director, if you're leading a team, if you're a technical lead, you know, all those positions especially have a lot of impact on whether it gets implemented, whether it's being talked about in important conversations or not. And that usually trickles down into implementation. So yeah, Suzanne, did you have any other thoughts?
One other thought. Design is a team sport. So that's number one. But number two, the person who makes the final call on whether requirements, goals, success has been accomplished, whether they're the executive, whether they're the product owner, that's the person who's going to say, not acceptable. This requirement is not met. Go back. So, yes, it's a team effort, but somebody needs to make the call when those requirements are not met. It's a great question, Jack. Let's see if there's other questions.
I have a question. I think I saw in the chat earlier, someone mentioned or commented about creating living personas using AI. And I was just wondering, clarify what that really means and get Shruti's take on that issue.
I actually missed that one detail in the chat, but yeah, I am an AI optimist, but I do want to be careful about what AI is capable of doing at this point, at least. So can AI help us do what we already do in our teams? Like if there's a researcher, who's working on research with real people with disabilities and using their lived experience to make personas. I don't think that should change. Can AI be used to maybe plan for that? Maybe make sure that you're considering things that you would not consider. Yeah, so just maybe helping the process, but I don't think you can replace actual lived experience of people with disabilities when you're creating personas. And yeah, I was wondering, Suzanne, if you have any thoughts on that, as I know you've been a researcher for so long.
I don't have any additional thoughts on it. I will say personally, I'm also an AI optimist, but my personal agent seems to hallucinate so much that I don't trust it. All right. I think we are winding down. Shruti, thank you so much for putting this together and sharing all your insights with us and everyone here on the call. Thank you for joining, for taking the time. We hope this was helpful to you and that you're kind of walking away with this sense of, yeah, digital accessibility is not rocket science. It's about setting an intention, right? And it's not just about doing the right thing for the social good, but it also makes good business sense. So we hope you'll follow up and schedule some time with us. We'll be in touch with an email where you can download a link to the actual recording. And stay tuned for a new webinar in April that will be about continuous research. Thank you all for joining. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you, everyone.